Okay, welcome everybody to our session 6. You're joining the Literacy Coaching Network for those of you that are just joining for the first time. And we are looking at the book Coaching for Systems and Teacher Change. And this session is chapter 7. So I'm going to get started with our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that Dyslexia Canada and IDA Ontario serve citizens on the traditional territories of all of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to our country. This acknowledgement reminds us of our responsibilities to our relationships and the ancestral lands on which we learn, share, and live. So my name is Sharon Carosi, and my co-host is Jordan Sloan.
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à notre session aujourd'hui. Just a reminder, si vous voulez aller dans les salles de breakout, dans les salles de discussion en français, mettez le F à côté de votre nom. So putting the F beside your name if you would like to go into the French breakout room. And you can do that just by taking a little click on those 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of your screen and going to rename. So today we are digging into chapter 7. We're getting close to the end of our book, and this is facing the complexities of change. And this chapter really digs into the resources and the tools to enhance that forward movement. So when our teachers or teams are expected to change, as we've seen with all of the stuff that's coming through in literacy development right now, but sometimes they're reluctant or even unwilling to do so, we don't get that change effort. We don't achieve that. So I think of the teachers that I've worked with that have said to me that, you know, they wouldn't even look at evolving their teaching practice around literacy until the curriculum was updated. And they're required to do that now, right? So that's just, readiness is so important, and it's so important to us as coaches. It impacts how we interact. Even when we're armed with all of the learning that we've done, all of the alliance strategies that we've read about in this book, it still impacts how we're perceived, which ultimately influences who's going to work with us. It impacts how we're received. I know I've been in situations where teachers were not on board, and it took a lot of extra effort on my end. So today and throughout this chapter, we're going to look at readiness, and we're going to approach it as a continuum. So we're not 100% present, it's not 100% absent, and it can shift. We're going to look at an informal measure to understand teacher or team readiness for change and look at some strategies to build that readiness. And speaking of change, we are heading into the final chapter of our coaching book, 2 chapters, I guess. Our next session is going to address those last 2 chapters together. And then we're going to come back from March break and work together until the school year. We're going to keep working through these networking sessions. And we want to know from you what you would like to dig into next. So I'm just putting a link in the chat to a Google form, and I'll post it again at the end, and we'll share it in the Facebook group to let you give us an idea of what you want to look into in those last few sessions. There is the option of looking at a book like Next Steps and taking a look at, you know, screening and what comes after that. Another resource that's out there, maybe some articles. So we've got lots of options to dig into. So give us your feedback. Let us know what we can do to help you between March and the end of this school year. All right, cross your arms comfortably. And you're just going to sit like that with your arms crossed while I talk for a slide. Just sit with your arms comfortably, just hang out like that. This chapter builds on the ideas that we discussed back in chapter 4, supporting teachers and teams with systems level change. In this chapter, we're going to dig a little deeper into working with those who may not quite be ready to make the change that is expected of them. I like those words, that the change that is expected from them. In our context, that of a new curriculum, it's not a choice. It's a change that is expected and that we are expected to implement, and that our teachers are expected to implement. Some of them still lack that background. Some may be resistant to that change in general, and some may love the way that they've always done things, thinking that they've seen growth in their students, and so they don't see the need for that change. Others are ready to jump in with both feet. Some people love change. I am one of those people. I thrive on change. But that means I also need to check myself and remember that not everyone is where I am, and not everyone is excited by these changes, especially in literacy and with the new language curriculum. So what can I do to get people and coaches and teachers that I'm working with ready to learn, to being open to evolving their practice even if they're not going to be quite as excited as I am. All right, now cross your arms the other way. So you were sitting the comfortable way, now cross your arms the other way. It feels different, right? How does this make you feel? Are you frustrated? Are you uncomfortable? Let's just sit like this for just for this slide, then I'll let you move. Despite the fact that you're making just a little bit of a change to your stance, the feeling is not the same. The longer you sit with your arms this way, though, the more comfortable it becomes. Implementation teams and teachers often find that making change to their practice can be difficult because it typically requires them to learn to do something new or in a different way while dealing with the emotional ups and downs of doing something new in a way that's unfamiliar or even risky, right? That's like a 1-2 punch there, making teachers and teams prefer the status quo and signaling that maybe they're not quite ready for that change. We often find that making change in our practice can be difficult because it requires us to learn to do something new or in a different way. Some of the questions in Chapter 7 that we're taking a look at is, why is readiness important when a teacher or when teams are expected to make a change? How do we as coaches build readiness when teachers or teams are ambivalent to making a change? And how can we maintain a positive mindset about teacher and team readiness? For us as coaches, I think that's a really big key point to keep in mind as we look through this. So readiness to change is more than a cursory consideration. When teachers and teams are expected to change, as is the case right now in Ontario, but are ambivalent or even unwilling to do so, the end goal of change effort may not be achieved. Even beyond the end goal, we still see like so much anxiety along the way. Readiness is not an all or nothing. It's not a ready or not ready. We see readiness along that continuum. Furthermore, levels of readiness fluctuate depending on so many factors. So how many teachers who were fully ready, championing the changes of the new language curriculum, but then this last couple of weeks with moving to 1 mark on the report card kind of went from that championing that go, go, go to maybe compliance or maybe even a little bit of resistance when it came to learning that new part with the report card. Readiness can fluctuate. It can be based on many factors, including the degree to which coaches believe the change is needed, right up there, that they have the skills necessary to make the change, and that they have leadership support for making the change. These points suggest that we don't necessarily need to wait for a minimum level of readiness before making the change. Some people just aren't ever going to be ready for a change. And if we wait too long, we're going to lose that valuable time. Instead, our role is to determine where our coaches fall along this readiness continuum. And when needed, find that where we can go and see what their readiness is for change and see how we can move a little bit. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that across the province, we tackled one big change over the last few weeks as we moved to 1 mark for report cards. This was not an easy change, and I'm willing to bet that most teachers in the province were closer to the resistant end of the continuum. We hosted a webinar for quite a few people, and I'm going to share the link in the chat right now to that recording. So it's not a fancy edited version. It's just the Zoom recording. It's going to be edited and re-released, made a little more beautiful in plenty of time for the next round of reports. And we are also working on a version en français that will be ready before the next round of reports as well. So just grab onto that if you want just the unedited, quick version from Zoom. I have to say there is case studies in there, and it was an awesome, awesome presentation. Not just because it was me talking, but there we go. All right, one more slide for me, Sharon. Measuring readiness. So here we go. The purpose of measuring readiness is to better understand the degree to which teachers and teams are prepared to make a change, since our own perception may not always be accurate. There's a chart in Appendix V, and I put the link up here, and I'm going to put that link in the chat to the PDF as well, just so you've got it close by, because we're going to talk about it in the breakout room. We can use this to collect data that's going to help us to determine where to focus additional support. So the authors suggest that this doesn't have to be like a big giant thing. It just can be done in about 10 minutes. It can be a conversation, or it can be something that you use with teachers that they fill out on their own pre or post meeting. If you're working with coaches who are not ready, who are visibly not ready for a change, whether they're articulating that verbally or non-verbally, you don't need to measure because you've already observed that their readiness is not there. On here, we're going to go back to those 3 points in the last slide. We're looking at coaches rating themselves on a scale of 1 being completely disagree to 10 being completely agree. And they're going to rate the change is clearly needed. I have the skills that are needed to make this change work. And this organization's most senior leaders are committed to this change. So just for yourself, take a quick pause and think through where you yourself fit on that scale of 1 to 10. So statement 1, this change is clearly needed. I can tell you for me, yes, that was a 10 right there, right away. This change was needed. This change to the curriculum was needed, and the change that we needed is being addressed with what is in this new curriculum. So for me, that is a 10. Statement 2, I'm not feeling quite as strongly about. I think there's a lot of learning required. I know that I've been deep in this learning for over 5 years now, and I still would place myself somewhere around a 6 out of 10. ONlit has helped so much, and I was joking with Una the other day that ONlit has made me so much smarter and helped me so much in dealing with teachers and in my role. So I do want to put out there, if there is anything that you need, if there's anything we can help you with, you can email me, you can email Sharon. If it's for your own learning, your own next steps, or if it's something that you're working with a teacher on that you're just like, I just don't know how to move through this, you can either throw it in the Facebook group and the whole group can contribute to that conversation, or you can feel free to email me anytime. I'm totally willing to help. The final statement, I think, depends on who I am considering a leader. So I am lucky in my board that I have very, very strong support at a board level and within the group that I work with. I know that's not the case in every board, and I know that many of you are trying to make change. And again, if I can help with that, please reach out. I'm happy to direct you to all kinds of resources out there. So back to the readiness measures. In interpreting the results, you're looking for a 70 to 80% to be considered ready for that change. What if they're not there? What if you're not at that 70 to 80%? Sharon's going to take us through some of the strategies for assisting teachers and teams through change.
So we're going to look now at the 3-step strategies that the authors suggest for assisting teachers and teams through their change. So the first one is called the communication protocol. So I'm just going to open it. It's on page, I believe it's 156 in your book, if you have your book handy. So it's Appendix W, 156. But
I put it in the chat too, Sharon.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. So we're just going to look at the purpose of this. So first of all, this is for people that you are worried that they're not quite there ready to make a change. So so in this protocol, information about the change, why the change is needed, who is affected, the goals of the change effort is shared with teachers or teams and with leaders working in the system. And it's just as important as the protocol provides a structured collaborative process for continually improving the implementation effort. So we just wanted you to be aware that these 3 things are in the appendix. So this is for like working how you're, and again, just a reminder that the authors are very big on this is a structure to give you some ideas. You don't have to read it word for word. You probably wouldn't. You would change it. You could make it your own, but it gives you some information, a starting point for you. So you're going to work with the leaders and teachers or teams to summarize the change effort, especially that we know that some change is necessary, as Jordan already mentioned, with the implementation of the new language curriculum. So again, where they choose to start, how fast they go, that's all going to happen in your pre-meeting. Like, what's the purpose? What's the goal? Who's going to be involved in this? What will happen when the change is made? So these are things that you need to be thinking about for those reluctant to change. Just a reminder too, that you're going to make sure that you can include all the individuals that are involved in this change. So if you can bring in a principal or your whole team or a special education teacher that's working with the with students from particular classrooms, that you're working together as a team. And that you sort of outline what needs to be, what information you're going to be gathering. So are we looking at assessment data, observations? What are we going to be doing? And who's going to be responsible for gathering that information? And then creating a series of virtual or face-to-face meetings so that these are set in place. You know that next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, you're meeting with people, that those are already predetermined, that they're not sort of, oh, I saw you in the hall. Do you have a minute to chat? This is more to give them that stability that they know this is coming up, and that you're going to talk about it. Whether they're ready to go or not, it doesn't matter, but at least you're in the conversation with them. So at the meeting, the teachers or teams are asked to share the following: what is working well, what is not working well. Again, you're not judging what their answers are, you're just listening. What are some possible solutions for issues related to the change effort? Who's doing what, when, and how, and any needs that they have related to the change effort. So celebrate those successes. If someone says, wow, I see my kids, they now know the alphabet, like, you need to cheer on those steps. And then work with the leaders or teachers or the teams to ensure that they have identified what would be some possible solutions. So it's best if they kind of come up with some ideas. We do want to be listening to what their feelings and thoughts are. The next one is setting up networking groups for teachers and for teams. So again, we'll just look at this one quickly. It's on the next page, 157, Appendix X. So this document contains tips coaches can use to meaningfully network teachers and teams to other professionals experiencing a similar change. So we've tried to demonstrate this by giving you guys time to network with each other, share what's working. You guys are the experts in the room. Share what's happening, what's not working. So again, it's that type of thing. You introduce the educators to others who are experiencing similar change efforts, facilitate the members in creating an informal purpose statement that describes the focus of the networking community. And the research suggests that the most beneficial communities focus on sharing experience about the change effort, identifying successes and challenges, and offering guidance. And then encourage the network community to create a schedule so that you know when it's happening next, and then clarify your role, and make sure that you are listening rather than guiding in the conversation. And then the last one is the motivational interviewing. So this resource is for coaches to ask teachers and teams when coaches are not ready to make a change. So the overarching purpose of the motivational interview is to offer teachers and teams opportunities for thinking and talking about their own insights. So when I first read through this, I thought, well, if a person that I worked with those teachers and they don't want to see me and they don't want to meet with me and they have lots of reasons why they can't and won't and all that. So I was quite interested, but apparently, according to the research, this is one way to move them inch by inch. So I was quite fascinated by this. So what would you, so you're asking the person that you're coaching, why would you want to make this change? So they may say, well, I have to, I don't have any choice in the matter. And that's okay. If that's a starting point and they know they have to implement a new language curriculum, that's great. Like, at least you've established why they want to make this change. How might you go about it in order to succeed? What are the 3 best reasons for you to do it? And how important is it for you to make the change, and why? So again, you're giving them, and they suggest that you give this to them a little bit ahead of time so that they have time to reflect on these questions that you're going to ask them. And you could create your own, of course, but these are just some suggestions. So we are going to now just talk about the readiness do's and don'ts. So expect to work with teachers and teams reluctant to change. Some of us started that way. We just didn't understand why we would want to change. And I remember sometimes getting articles. I used to subscribe to a magazine, and I would read some of those articles and think, well, I'm not doing that kind of stuff. Like, we don't do phonics at our school board, and blah, blah, and I was really reluctant until I started to work with students that were really struggling. And then I started to try new ideas and seeing such great success with them. I was just so sold. So view those who are not quite ready to make a change in a positive light and with empathy. We've all been there. We've all been at that starting point where we think our current practice is really good. Like, this is who we are. We've spent years creating a program that was working with the students, or we're using resources that have been given to us by our board that we think that are supposed to be working. So be realistic with people where they're at. And it's okay wherever they are. We just need to move them inch by inch. And even our own selves, we have to keep moving our own selves inch by inch because sometimes we can get kind of stuck and complacent. It's like, okay, I know this now. I'm good. And maybe there's just so much more. Maybe it's just the tip of the iceberg that we've been introduced to, and there's a lot more to for us to learn. Use alliance strategies when teachers or teams are not quite ready to make a change. Developing that relationship with your team is so critical. And do not enact readiness strategies with the expectation that teachers and teams will reach readiness at the same time or the same place. As Jordan said, she loves change. I was looking for change at the time that I started looking for new ideas. So I was ready. She was ready. Not everyone's ready because they don't really feel that there's a need to make changes. Also, I've heard that comment also that, until the board trains me on something new, I'm not doing it. However, we do have the curriculum that's been provided to us. We do know that that's our job. We are to teach what the curriculum expectations are. So, if all of us need to learn and get better at this. The anything that's new to us, we just need to keep digging in and trying our best. So, to wrap up, a lack of readiness for change does not have to stop coaches in their tracks.